you so much, Peter, and so wonderful to be with you all here at the bottom of Africa, all the way up in District 83. I'm thrilled to be here and to share with you some insights into how to write, how to deliver winning speeches, regardless of whether it's for contests or back at work or for functions, just how to win over your audience whenever you speak. So, as we get into that, I would like to ask you a question, and let's fire up the chat and see if we're all awake this morning. But when it comes to contests, specifically to competitive speaking, if you had to narrow it down, and I'm going to share you a few things with you today, but if you had to narrow it down to one thing that you absolutely need to win a contest, what would you say that is? Just pop it in the chat. If you had to narrow it down to one thing that you need to win a contest, what do you think that might be? Energy, time. Jason, I can agree with you on that. You need a lot of time. It eats up time. Confidence, a big takeaway, emotional connection with the audience, love, passion, humor. Oh, I love this. Charisma, enthusiasm, connection. We're getting all the ingredients, presence, confidence. Okay, absolutely. And if I could take all of these and bundle them together, you need all of these: connection with the audience, heart. But we're missing the one thing you need to win a contest. And that is you need to enter. Just putting it out there. You cannot win a contest if you are not in it. And I know because the first time I entered a contest in Toastmasters was in 2012. I was a new member. I didn't know what the contest was. I entered for fun. And I thought, this will be easy. I was already a professional speaker. So I thought, how hard can this be? My sister Kay, who is 12 years older than me and also a Toastmaster, she entered because she was nervous and she wanted to stretch herself. And so she worked on her speech for a month, and I worked on my speech the night before. And I mean, I think the Toastmasters, you get this mix of people who put in the effort and people who leave it till the last minute. I was one of those. I walked into the contest thinking, I've got this in the bag. You might get a sense where my story is going. Kay beat me. And that was when I discovered that I hadn't entered a little speaking contest at my club. That was the first time I realized Toastmasters was truly an international organization. And I had to sit at the back of a lot of contests eating humble pie as I watched my sister, with the sixth speech she'd ever given in her life, go all the way to becoming the district champion of District 74. And I was absolutely blown away to watch her journey, and then watched her go all the way to the world semifinals, where she came second in her semifinal to Ryan Avery, who 2 days later became the 2012 world champion of public speaking. Witnessing her journey was inspiring, but it was also intimidating. It made me realize how much work goes into a contest. As someone put in the chat, it takes time, effort, energy, heart, passion. And so I didn't enter the contest until 2015. So it took me 3 years to get back on the stage and put my name in the hat. And I got as far as the division that year, where I came third. I'm smiling in that picture. I was not happy. My ego was horrified. I had this whole story. You're a professional speaker. You get paid to speak, and you can't win a Toastmasters contest. They don't understand your style of speaking. And so I did what I think a lot of people do when that happens. I just never entered again. In fact, I left Toastmasters in 2019 to become a mom. And I said goodbye to Toastmasters. I said hello to motherhood. So how on earth am I here telling you about what it takes to win the world championships? Well, this little unexpected thing happened to us in 2020. I rejoined Toastmaster as a new mom for community. For community, when we were locked in our bedrooms, I had to figure out how to use the virtual world to make money. And in 2020, I watched virtually as Mike Carr became our first ever world champion, virtual world champion. And I was blown away by his speech, but particularly by his message. He kept saying, the victory is not in the result, the victory is in the try. And I really heard that because I wasn't even trying when it came to competing. And something switched on in me, and I decided there and then I was going to compete in 2021. I also knew I had a message I wanted to share with the world, which was the lesson my mum taught me growing up, to leave the world better than we find it. And so I decided to work on that contest very differently to how I did in 2012. I started working on that speech 3 months before the contest. I started testing it at clubs before the contest for my club level. And I really brought the energy and intention that Kay had brought to her contest journey to the semifinals. And it was hard work. You know, we were totally virtual. We were turning our bedrooms upside down, trying to turn them into studios. I had a little 18-month-old boy who would come in while I was rehearsing or even competing. I sometimes had to go and change a dirty nappy straight after winning a contest. It was crazy. But I started going through the levels, and you know, the short story of what was a long journey is that I made it to the world semifinals. My mom's speech was strong enough to get me into the finals. And I woke up, I'll never forget waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to see who'd made the finals, and seeing that I was on that list was just unbelievable. A lot of pressure because I was the only speaker from Africa to have made the finals. Only 5 women had ever won. So this was huge. I wasn't just competing for myself, I was competing for my continent. And I was ready because I'd been working on my second speech for 100 days. I did not waste a second after hearing that I'd won district. I started preparing as if I was going to make the semifinals. And I worked on my dad's speech, you know, that you have the choice to pick up your pen and write a different story about your life. And I was ready to compete. We had to record 8 hours after they announced that we were through. So it was crazy. But I thought before I take you into what I learned about what makes a winning speech, I'd give you a little insight into the watch party that I got to have. For the first time in 7 months in that journey, legislation in South Africa allowed people to gather. You could have 50 people at a gathering, and we gathered to watch the finals together. It was unbelievable. Here, people were so excited to be out their bedrooms. And in South Africa, we celebrate in big style. If you know anything about us, we've got these loud things called vuvuzelas. They look like a plastic trumpet. People take them to sports matches. They were there. We had flags. And this is what we got to hear on the 26th of August, 2021.
The first place winner and the 2021 World Champion of Public Speaking is Verity Price.
We were very excited. So gives you a little sense. I didn't get a convention. I didn't get to be with a lot of Toastmasters, but just a little sense of how we managed to celebrate anyway. And it was a life-changing moment for me. It was groundbreaking for Africa to finally have one of these trophies on our continent. You can only imagine how thrilled I was when the very next year, Cyril Jr. Dim from Zimbabwe, although he was representing Poland, but Zimbabwe, we still took the win. And it has been life-changing. But what I can tell you, having gone through the journey of eventually winning this contest, is that every year, and I have people come to me for coaching, and I've been lucky enough to have 3 of my clients place 3rd in the world the last 3 years. But every time someone comes to me for coaching, I have to say to them, in this contest of 35,000 contestants, only one person is ever going to get that final trophy. Only one person. Only one person is guaranteed to win. But I believe the reason we should compete is the fact that the 35,000 other people that don't get that trophy, they are guaranteed to grow. And that is why I believe we should compete, because you cannot be competing for the trophy. think we've got people unmuted.
Are they going?
But it's to choose the growth. That is the gift that competitive speaking gives you, because you work so much harder on those speeches than you do on a normal speech. So on the idea of gifts, I just would like to know, I mean, and we're also coming up for Christmas, for anyone who celebrates that, who enjoys getting gifts? Getting gifts, giving gifts. I see people smiling, hands going up. I'm a big gift giver. It's my love language. And what I realized after winning the World Championship, as I was reflecting on what I'd learned about speaking, it suddenly hit me that we call it presenting. It has the word present in it, which means to give. And it suddenly hit me that a speech is a gift that you give to your audience. It's for them. If they don't take home what you've said, if they aren't changed by what you've delivered, then you gave the speech to yourself. And when you start thinking about giving a gift to your audience, it changes the way you write it. And I'm going to share with you a few world champions today, just little snippets to show you how each and every time someone wins this contest, it's because their speech was a gift for the audience. And so we're going to go through it step by step. We're going to look at small snippets of previous world champs just to see how it all comes together. But before we do that, it is Christmas coming up. So we have choices in how we wrap gifts. You can wrap it like that. I'm not sure how you would feel if you received a gift wrapped like that. Or you could wrap it like this. Just in the chat, if you had to choose, which would you choose? Would you want the bag or the box? Which one would you want, the bag or the box? Let's just do a quick poll. Just pop it in. I see Joel saying box, Deepa, box, 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 please. I love it. Box, of course. It's so obvious, of course. I mean, there might be a check for $1 million in that crumpled up bag, but we've decided we don't want to open it because it doesn't look like any effort was put in. So other than effort, why do you want the box rather than the bag? What is that box making you feel? Why do you want the box? Is care being put in? Feel valued, someone cared, it's organized, it's special, thoughtful, it took time, attention. Oh, I love this. It's attractive. Are you curious to know what's inside? Kind of want to find out what's in there. It's making a good impression. You can see people decide before you start speaking if they're going to listen. That's how quickly we decide if something looks like there's value. Let's open up the Pandora's boxes, Jason. I love it. So the reason I wanted to do this exercise is to really see how so much of an audience's attention is determined by how they feel. And this is where I started to look at speeches and realize that there are 3 things you are always, as a speaker, wanting to create in your audience when you're speaking. Now, the first emotion is the reason people always want that box, and that is the emotion of curiosity. When people are curious, they lean in, they listen. And that's why your speech title needs to evoke curiosity. You can't give away your message in your speech title. That's like giving someone a present that you haven't bothered to wrap. Curiosity, and if you look over previous world champions, I mean, this year's world champion, Louisa, 37 Strangers, that title makes you go, oh, I wonder what this is about. You know, have you been there? Jocelyn Tyson, Indini. I can just go back through the years. Mine was a great read. Mrs. Montgomery and the Librarian. These are titles that make you go, I wonder what's coming. So curiosity is something as a speaker, you want to create early and you want to create it often throughout your speech with a pause, or you'll never believe what I saw when I walked around the corner, and a pause. People are going to re-engage. They're going to keep listening. So I'm going to show you in a little bit how world champions create curiosity. But the ideal is you want to have done it from your title and straight in at your introduction. So you've grabbed the audience's attention. Once you've got their attention, you now need to keep it. And the way you keep attention is through connection. If the audience can see themselves in what you're saying, if they can see themselves in your story, that's when they're going to see themselves in your solution. And so connection is a really crucial part of communication. It's around allowing people to feel part of what you're sharing. And for me, when I'm coaching people on speeches, we look at the scenarios in their speeches and go, can anyone anywhere identify and relate with this? If it's talking about fear or an embarrassing situation or losing love or finding love or losing someone you love, anything that anyone anywhere has gone through, a traffic jam, failing an exam, anything like this is a connection point because people can see themselves in what you're saying. That's also the power of analogies, using an analogy to explain something so people can see what you're saying. So connection is something we want to create throughout a speech. And I realized in my final speech, if you've watched it, a great read, in the early versions, you know, the speech is about a miserable, lonely, unmarried 40-year-old woman who wished that she'd had a white wedding, basically an unhappy Cinderella. That's what my speech was about. It did not connect with all the men in the audiences when I was practicing early versions. I had to go away and go, how do I make this connect for everyone? And that's when I realized, with coaching from my sister as well and with Lance Miller, that I needed to bring more of my dad's story in, about a man who'd lost his job and had to start over and had to write a different story. So connection is something you have to consciously create for your audience. You can't just write from your point of view. Okay, so those are two very important emotions you want to create: curiosity and connection, because if you do, you will get the third thing we always want as a speaker, and that is commitment. Commitment to our message, taking it home, acting on it, being changed because of it. But you can't get commitment until you've created curiosity and connection. Asking for commitment before you've done those first two things is like asking someone to marry you on your first date. Not a good idea. You want to create curiosity. You want to find connection before you commit to something. So let's have a look at how world champions do this. I'm going to focus on curiosity and connection for now. So I've used some of my favorites. There are others I would love to include here. I just haven't had time to edit it. So this isn't favoritism. It's just ones that I had and I've put together. So have a look, see what you think, see if these starts to these speeches makes you curious.
The ultimate question, that question that has plagued man since the dawn of time, and that question that each and every one of us must ask at some point in our life. Do you validate?
The steering wheel jerked. I tried to keep the car in control. That night in Chicago, a flat tire changed me. What?
You and I are not very different from this flower. Just like this flower is unique, you are unique.
I was spellbound as I watched the sheriff, who had just been shot, slide back, open that heavy metal door, stagger forward a couple of steps, look deep into the camera and say, I before E except after C.
I had dragged myself to the shops just to get more ice cream, thinking no one I know is going to be there. But there she was.
So I hope you're seeing how each and every one of those videos, those starts, create curiosity. I'm sure you'd be like, oh, I'd like to see more of this speech. And you might have noticed that with the curiosity, there was connection. You know, things like using the analogy of a flower or a tire and a flat tire. They're instant things that people can connect with. So that is what we need to be doing as speakers. And also look at how unique each speaker's take on that is. They weren't following a formula, oh, I need to create curiosity, but they knew how to grab an audience's attention, and they did it in their unique way. So it's looking for what's your unique way to have the audience listen and lean in to hear more of your story. Now let's look at how they create connection, how they create moments where the audience can see themselves in the story, and see if you can connect with each of these scenes.
I had a job I didn't like. I hadn't had a date in 3 years. And I had a couple of roommates named Mom and Dad. I felt like my life was going nowhere. So I took control. I left my home and my family, and I headed to Los Angeles to start over. 6 months later, I had a job I didn't like. I was dating a girl who was trying to make me better by pointing out all of my faults. And I had a couple of roommates that made Dumb and Dumber look like Einstein and Oppenheimer.
Why do flat tires always happen when you're dressed up? Opened the trunk, excavated the jack, unused for centuries.
I have a son who's 4, and he had this bad habit of writing on the walls with crayons. And one evening I walked into his room and he's going at it, just writing and drawing and so on, and I said, hey. Are you stupid? Don't you ever do that again. And guess what happened? He did it again. Nobody likes to be threatened. Nobody likes to be intimidated. His pride would not allow it. He did it again just to spite me. A week later, I walked into his room, and again, he's going at it. And this time, he was even looking at me just...
Now, I wasn't afraid of the cops, but there was one person I was very afraid of, and that was my mama. Raise your hand if you have an emotional mother. Let me see. Put them all together, you get mama.
But I still had to tell my parents. When I got home, I snuck in, and I thought, if I just hide in my closet, they'll forget I exist. But then I heard from the kitchen, Mike, come in. I walked in, and I said, Mom, Dad, there's something I have to tell you. I love you, and I am scared of sheriffs. I don't know. I ran to my room. I choked. I couldn't think of anything to say. I thought, I'll tell them tomorrow.
When I was a little girl, I used to love snuggling on my dad's lap while he read me fairy tales. Not surprisingly, I grew up wanting the fairy tale.
All right. So could you see yourself in each of those different scenarios? Could you connect with what they were saying, feeling like, okay, I'm with you, I'm following you, you're not talking about something that's foreign to me? And so as you look at your own speeches, you go, am I creating connection? Will the audience be able to see themselves in this, relive it with me, feel what I felt, see what I saw, hear what I heard? That level of connection with curiosity makes it so much easier to get them to commit to your message. So now let's look at what are the 4 steps, or what I believe are the 4 steps to writing a winning speech. And to make it easy to remember, I am just going to unpack, or unwrap, if you like, the word gift, G-I-F-T. Those are the 4 steps. That's all you're going to have to remember how to write a winning speech. And the first step of writing a winning speech, the G of the gift, is you want to get clear on your message. It is crucial that you know, what am I trying to say to the audience? And a great message is 10 words or less. It's easy to say, easy to repeat, easy to remember. I always say when I'm working with corporate clients, we go through sharing is, and they all go caring. You know, teamwork makes the dream work. Our lives are full of these messages, and I call them sticky statements. They stick in people's minds. They're easy for them to repeat, to share with someone else, and then you know your message has actually landed. Ideally, it's got an action to it, so there's a clear instruction on what people should do. Sharing is caring. It's telling people you should share. It's a very clear message. So we want to make sure it's actionable and it's easy to say. When you start looking in a lot of winning speeches, you'll see the message comes up normally at the height of the conflict, when the hero is really struggling to solve something and an awareness comes to them. The message is brought to them by someone or something other than themselves. It's never about you being the hero of your own story. Who helped you change? What taught you that lesson? Let the message come from someone or something other than yourself, and then show how you've changed. Show the change before you ask the audience to change. So I'm going to look at the speeches we've looked so far, and let's see how their messages come through and the clarity of the message, 10 words or less, sticky statements. Let's have a look at what those world champs.
She took her little machine and she went, cha-chink. And then as she handed it back, she looked at me and she said, "There's something special about you." I took the ticket and headed for the elevator. But I stopped. And I turned around and just said, "Thank you." I don't know how long it had been since I'd felt validated. Her words stayed with me all the way home. And as I was looking at my life, I started to wonder how long it had been since I'd validated somebody else. I wanted to do that. I wanted to make people feel good. Every person goes through life wanting to be right, wanting to be valuable. Find that. Bring it out in them. I started to discover in my life that I got what I validated.
Then another voice. Reach out. Reach out. I can handle it. I used to believe that to reach out was weakness. I discovered my weakness was refusing to reach out. When you reach out, you attract ideas that lift you up. When you reach out, you attract solutions that lift you up. When you reach out, you attract friendships that lift you up.
Words, when said and articulated in the right way, can change someone's mind. They can alter someone's belief. Words have power. Words are power. Words could be your power. You can change a life, inspire a nation, and make this world a beautiful place.
Montgomery put her arm around me and she said, "It's okay that you took the risk to try to fix it. The victory is not in the result. The victory is in the try. My failure had not killed me. And yours will not kill you." What was it that Mrs. Montgomery said? The victory is not in the result. The victory is in the try.
Verity, your life is a book. And if you're not enjoying the read, write a different story. And then watch for a miracle, because I'm watching too. I shout at miracles, Dad, and how? How do I write a different story about this? Prove my point? I went to Facebook. And you guessed it. There were no stories of the miserable 40-year-olds living in spare rooms. But the letter just lay there. It was like it was looking at me, almost whispering, write a different story.
Hey, were those messages clear? Was it clear what they were trying to communicate? You could hear the amount of repetition of the message, but without it being a lecture to the audience. And every time I watch these little snippets and other great speeches, it occurs to me that when it comes to a message, and normally when it's something that changes our lives, there's the moment you receive it. And then often we reject the help. You know, I was like, come on, Dad, how can I do this? You could hear Praise Vasilev, reach out. How, you know, I don't need to do that. So you receive it, then you reject it, then you reflect on it. I wonder how long it's been since I validated someone. I want to do that. And then you respond to it. Then the change happens. So don't gloss over how a message changed you. Sometimes when we write our own stories, we forget actually what happened. And I know because in the early versions of my World Championship speech, I get my dad's letter, and then the next day I'm happy and I've just sorted it all out. And my brother-in-law, who was the spare room I was living in, said, Verity, it took you months to change your attitude. You've got to let the audience know, like you've got to illustrate that it wasn't easy. And so I just did that in a few lines, but it's to show the reality that change is not easy. And don't just get the message and transform, show the transformation. And that brings us to the second step of gift, which is to intentionally craft your story to reveal your message. Your message is what you're wrapping. The wrapping paper is the story. That is what makes it intriguing and interesting for the audience to listen to. But here's the thing. I believe it would be possible to win the World Championship of Public Speaking telling the story of how you learned to boil an egg. I truly believe that if that story was told well and there was a message worth sharing, you could win this competition. And Mark Brown says, your story does not have to be spectacular. It needs to be sincere. And it's to really understand that. But let's look at how do we intentionally craft a story? And this is a masterclass on its own. So I'm just a short little one today. But what I want to focus on is the idea that you use your story to get your message home to your audience. And it's another short framework to look at the way you're developing stories. So the first thing you need to do in a story is establish who is the hero and where are they and when is this happening. So you very quickly need to give the context within which the hero exists. Now, this you can do in a few lines. In my one, I was 40 living in a spare room. I'd always wanted a fairy tale, but people very quickly knew who I was, where I was, and when it was happening. The story becomes interesting when you introduce an obstacle. And for this to really grab the attention, you want to escalate the tension. You want to make people curious, sitting on the edge of their seats, connected to wanting you to solve the problem. And so as you look at speeches, you'll see how people stack the conflict. And then this happened. And just when I thought it, this happened. So this is where energy and passion, all of that comes in. But you want to relive what it was like to be in the middle of that obstacle, in that conflict. At the height of the conflict, at the height of dealing with the obstacle, generally, and if you look back over your life, you might see this as the pattern, a mentor emerges, someone or something that is going to help you overcome the obstacle. And there you saw Lance Miller. It was a receptionist who gave him a compliment. For Prez Vasilev, it was a flat tire. You know, for Mike Carr, it was a librarian. It can be anyone, but it's someone or something. Mine was my dad that shows you a way forward. And once you've received it, possibly grappled with it, reflected on it, and then started to responding to it, that's when you show how the hero emerges transformed, changed because they took on that message. So this is a very short look at how you work on a story, but it's going, am I taking people on a clear journey where they're on the edge of their seats, in the scene with me, seeing what's happening, painting pictures with your words? And am I giving credit to the person or the thing that helped me to overcome the obstacle? And if it wasn't, sometimes, and Prez Vasilev does that, he said a little voice. So it actually was inside him, but he still made it separate to him. A little voice said, reach out. It's not going, I just thought to myself, I should reach out. That alienates us from the audience. So it's showing how you've overcome the obstacle and what helped you to do it. So look at the way you're writing your stories and go, am I getting my message home with the way I'm telling the story? Am I showing my own transformation before I ask the audience to change? I'm not going to show you videos for stories because then we'll have to watch the entire speeches, and it's worth going and watching winning speeches and seeing how this plays out. But the third step, the F of the gift, is to fill in the gaps for the audience. And this step is truly the reason why I believe I won in 2021. I was able to practice my speech at 42 clubs in 16 countries. Some of those clubs I visited more than once. I received feedback from more than 200 Toastmasters. It was a lot to read through. It was confronting to consider changing my speeches. But when I started noticing threads and themes in the feedback, and I started adjusting and adapting my speeches, that's when they got to a level that was good enough to help me win. So I truly believe I co-created that winning speech with a lot of Toastmasters. It wasn't my own journey. It was with Lance Miller, my sister, and fellow Toastmasters. So would it be interesting, because this is about 5 minutes long, so that's why I want to check, would it be interesting to see some before and afters of my semi-final and my final speech, what I was doing, what people asked me to change, and what I actually did in the final contests? Okay, so I'm going to show you, and you'll hear my baby crying in the background, and you'll know it was very real doing it in lockdown. But you'll see my bit of my semis and my finals, and just see what the audience asked and how I adjusted to fill in the gaps so that they understood what it is that what I was saying. So let's have a look.
Her life never made the headlines, but there were lines of people at her memorial, many with tattoos and nose rings. As an afterthought, we put out a little book for them to write memories of her in. And story after story told of the small ways that she'd left things better than she'd found them. Her beach would have told the same story. Never made the headlines, but there were long lines of people at her memorial, many with tattoos and nose rings. We put out this book for them to share memories of her, and story after story spoke of all the ways that she'd left them better. I loved how she always cleaned up, even if it wasn't her mess. Her mom was the cool gran I always wanted. Sheila driving me to AA meetings is the reason I'm still clean. Do you know what? Her beach would have written the same story. All the good in this world is because someone looked at their stretch of life and they chose to clean it up. Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Mandela, leaders who became legends because they left everywhere they went a little, well, a lot better than they found it. All the good in this world is because someone looks at their stretch of life and they choose to leave it better. There are the obvious names, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Mandela, but I'm interested in the not so obvious names. Yours, mine, my mom's. My dad's letter catapulted me into what positive psychologists have been seeing for years. That something as simple as practicing daily gratitude can make it much easier to get through a hard time. This letter catapulted me into discovering that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what chapter of your life you're in. Something as simple as choosing to write a different story can make difficult circumstances a lot easier to deal with. Miracle that happened? I moved out of the spare room, much to my sister's relief. I met my husband, much to my relief. I had a baby at 44, much to my doctor's surprise. And the miracle that happened? Within 6 months, I'd moved into a new cottage, much to my sister's relief. Within a year, I'd kissed a prince, much to my relief. At 44, I had a baby boy, much to my doctor's disbelief. When life gets hard, look for the good, my darling, and watch for a miracle, because I'm watching too. Fresh out of miracles, Dad, and how do I look for the good in all of this? Verity, your life is a book. And if you're not enjoying the read, write a different story. And then watch for a miracle, because I'm watching too. Fresh out of miracles, Dad, and how do I write a different story about this?
Okay, getting a real behind the scenes. And I think if you had to look at anyone who makes the finals and if they've got recordings, you'd see this absolute transformation of their speeches from the beginning to the end, and most of it through feedback, because we're constantly working out, how do I fill in the gaps for the audience? How do I make my speech stronger? How do I meet their needs? And because it is a gift for them, and you have to ask for feedback. And this is the point where you have to make friends with feedback, because it's confronting, but it's only through feedback that you're going to take a speech to the next level. So the final step, I've forgotten how to count. It's a long Saturday here. The final step of gift, the T, is to tie it all together. For me, great communication often is evident when the speaker gets towards the end of their speech, and as they're finishing up, they manage to link back to all the golden moments that they've already said during the speech, and they bring it together with a flourish, and they finish with a call to action with their message to get that commitment. But tying it all together is so important. You don't want any new ideas in your conclusion. All you want to be doing is looking back to everything you've already said and just linking back to it. And if possible, going all the way back to your introduction, and even better, your title. In fact, the last line of my final speech was, if you pick up your pen and write a different story, it'll be a great read. That was the title of my speech. I just tied back to it. So our job is to look at what have we written and how do I tie it all together when I get to my conclusion. I'm going to show you how some world champions do that, how they tie it all together to also get that commitment to their message. Let's look at it. And I know we haven't watched the whole speech, but you've hopefully got enough of a sense of each of their speeches. So let's have a look.
This is the ultimate question. Do you validate? But this is not what's important. What's important is, can you, can you, can you, You've been a great audience.
Is there something collapsed in your life? Your knowledge may be limited. Your skills may be rusty, but no doubt you'll be changed when you reach out.
Words have power. Words are power. Words could be your power. You can change a life, inspire a nation, and make this world a beautiful place. Isn't that what we all wanted? Isn't that why we are all in this hall? Your mouth can spit venom, or it can mend a broken soul. Ladies and gentlemen, let that be our goal.
But the people in my life were able to reach into the trash can and make me whole again. If it was up to me, I would have never been able to do that. And this is why if you have great people in your life, no matter how broke, how lost, or how broken you become, they can piece you back together. Ladies and gentlemen, when I look at you, I see something in you. But I don't know what it is. Only.
You want to lead people to fix persistent problems. Someday, somewhere, somebody is going to have to try something new, and you as the leader have the opportunity to encourage that effort that might fail, for a chance to find the future. The victory is in the try. Be a Montgomery leader. Encourage risk. Try new things. The victory is not in the result, my friends. The victory is in the try. Contest chair.
Your life is a book. Then every day you get to decide, is your story being written for you or by you? When my dad reminded me that I was the author of my life changed. So if you're looking for a change, you want a new chapter, or you just fancy a miracle, pick up your pen and write a different story.
So there you have it. The 4 steps to writing and delivering a winning speech. Spending a lot of time getting clear on your message. It needs to be something you want to shout from the rooftops because this is what you stand for, this is what you believe in. And then intentionally crafting a story to reveal that message. Making sure you fill in the gaps for the audience so that the speech is for them, and that you tie it all together when you get to the end so that you get that commitment to your message, to what it is that you've shared with them. There are 4 simple steps, not that easy to do. It's intentionality, it's time, it's passion, it's care, it's being open to feedback. But if you start looking at the way you're working on speeches with having them as a gift, as your intention, I really believe it will take your speaking to the next level. And so all that is up to you now is to pick up your pen, to write your winning stories that are going to change and touch lives. And now I am all yours to fill in any gaps that are still there for you and any questions that you have that I can help with.
Okay, I ask that the audience use the raised hand feature in Zoom so that we can organize the questions more easily. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your virtual hand.
Jenna.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I have a question. Sorry, I'm at work, but I am one of the younger Toastmasters, or I appear much younger. And in previous contests, I feel like the story that I was sharing wasn't as relatable with the audience because I'm coming from a very unique situation and place. So I was hoping to hear some advice on how I can relate better to an audience that may not be as relatable in my personal experiences.
Great question, Jenna. So I think the key to that is to look at the stories you're sharing. And if it's speaking to a universal connection point, fear, love, hurt, disappointment, rejection, excitement, anything that's a feeling that anyone could have had, then the situation could be foreign to them, but they can still relate. And looking at things you failed at, things you've tried for the first time, things that frustrate you, flaws of character. If people can see themselves in that, it becomes easier. So it's taking your situation and going, how do I find universal touch points? Even if someone's never done this, let's say you're a figure skater or something, which we're never going to do. But so I don't know what your unique story is. But if you can talk about resilience or grit, if you can find the universal connection point, it makes it easier. Or if you're struggling with that, is there an analogy for that situation? This or simile, this is like being stuck in a queue at the supermarket, just so that you can help them see what you're saying. So that would be my kind of simple advice for something like that. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm not keeping track of whose hand's going up first.
Okay, it's Christopher is next.
Hi, Christopher.
Hi, Verity. Thank you for your time and your insights. I definitely appreciate it all. My question is pretty straightforward. I'm a new Toastmaster. I've only been a member for a month or so now. But what are your thoughts on memorizing word for word a speech?
So this is a rock and a hard place question, Christopher, because everyone has a different way. But the danger of memorizing word for word is if you lose your place, people go, oh, I need to go back to the beginning. Because when we memorize word for word, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and we don't have an overview of where the speech is going. So I always say to my coaching clients, let's internalize it, which means go for a walk and just talk through, I'm going to be in this scene, then I'm going there. Really internalize the flow of your speech and then practice. And I mean, for a contest, it is a word for word memorized exercise. But how I memorized was by walking, internalizing, and then I would practice it in different ways. And some of the ways I practiced was to keep it fresh for myself. I would go, now I'm going to do it like I'm telling my son, and I'm going to do it word for word, but I'm going to do it like this. And then I'm going to do it like I'm really bored. But what I was doing was word for word internalizing. So it's just a way to do that. But another trick for memorizing is, and I don't know whose this is, but I love it. They call creating a memory palace. So take each piece of your speech and place it around your home. So your introduction is at the front door. Then the next piece is in my passageway. Then I move to my lounge. Then I'm, my sitting room. Then I'm in the dining room. Then I'm in the kitchen. Then I'm in the bedroom. And if you remember it around your house, then if you lose your way, you just go, I'm just going to go to the next room. And there's the content again. So that could help as well. All the best with your new Toastmasters journey. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Linda.
Hi, thank you so much for this. It's incredible. So having listened to you, I can only guess that you're going to answer with great humility, and you might even struggle with coming up with the answer. But I can't help but wonder, in your journey from start to today, can you put any number on how many lives you may have changed? And I would guess that if you have an audience of 300, you wouldn't say 300, but the people that have personally come up to you and said, wow, I relate, wow, you've changed this. I just would like to know if you have any idea of the effect that you have had on your audience and the people in your lives that you've spoken to. Can you put it to it?
You've definitely asked me the hardest question I've ever been asked. Wow, Linda, and humbling. What a powerful question. So I don't know, but what I can say is I am humbled when I do hear from people how something has touched them. I'm always amazed. Actually, I think it was Sarah was chatting earlier saying she watches all my videos on YouTube, and I've only got 300 followers on YouTube, so I don't have a sense that it's going anywhere. But I often bump into people saying, I use that, it helped me, and I go, oh, wow, I don't know that that's happening. And I think that's the lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
You don't know whose lives you are touching, and it's easy to judge it on the surface, and we go through life not knowing. So I don't know. Obviously, I was given a platform with winning this contest that has created a spread, but it's also easy to doubt the impact. So thank you for asking a hard question.
Totally understandable. And I would think you would never have the answer to all of it. A great case in point, just quickly, my mom was an artist in a Newark, New Jersey. It was like a high crime school. And it wasn't until her funeral where her students were coming up to us saying how much she changed their lives. So I'm sure that kind of stuff is going on behind the scenes for you. You've changed mine. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. Wow. Thank you. I'm humbled.
Yes.
And I see thing in the chat from Jason, which I've never seen before. And I love that. You can count the number of seeds in an apple, but not the number of apples in a seed. I love that, Jason. Wow. A lesson for all of us. Oh.
Do we have any other questions? This is your opportunity to ask an expert, as we will say. Any competitors here?
Well, any questions about competing as well? It's quite a journey. Anna, yes.
Yeah, I don't know how to put a virtual hand. I wonder how you were able to write your speech and kind of prepare your speech. As also like Christopher, kind of tying back to him is like memorizing your speech, but not memorizing, but your outline of your speech. How were you able to do that?
So my speeches were written word for word, and each of them, my semifinals and my final speeches, I wrote 30 to 32 versions of them. So the memorizing happens when you're writing and rewriting that much. And I am lucky that I have a very quick recall memory, and I've done a bit of, I can only call it B-rate acting in my life. So my brain is used to, and I was a singer, so I'm used to remembering songs and lyrics. So that helped. But the writing and the rewriting and the rephrasing and refining and rehearsing is how I internalized it. But the interesting thing, Anna, is my final speech was 750 words on my document. And after I competed, someone transcribed what I'd said, and it was 820. So you need to know we add in, not even realizing it's never going to be word for word. And that is why, especially with contests, word count is so important. You want to have less in your written version because you're probably going to embellish. So I'm not sure if that answers it, but the writing and rewriting also helps you to internalize. And then you can create a skeleton, just the structure pieces that you're going to touch on. But the word for word helps you really to work on powerful sentences, vivid descriptions. If you leave that up to your mind, we sometimes forget the opportunity with language. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ben.
So I have a question. I wonder if your singing experience help you with your vocal variety and the sound quality of your speaking. And do you have some suggestion to improve vocal variety? That's my bigger problem.
Good question. So I do think that singing has helped me with understanding the emotional component to communication, which comes through in our voice. So I do think that probably has helped. But maybe what I want to touch on here is sometimes in Toastmasters, we get a little confused by what vocal variety is meant to be. And we put so much pressure on it that we end up not sounding natural. So for me, vocal variety is when someone is reliving a moment, their voice goes up because they're like, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the time. That's how you would tell a friend. Or like, I was absolutely shocked. You would naturally slow down. Your voice, the tone would drop. when I'm thinking I need to put in vocal variety, it starts sounding unnatural. So the vocal variety comes in when you are telling a story that you are reliving, you're feeling it, because then the voice comes in. So that would be the bit that I say we have to look at the way we're writing our speeches, and have we written it so we can relive it versus retell it? Because if I'm retelling you about the time and I was very late and I got to the airport and I didn't have money, as opposed to I got there and then my wallet was gone, the vocal variety comes. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Linda.
I had a quick thought. How do you prepare yourself mentally for contests?
Yeah, great question. So I'll tell you what I did when I was competing, because it was incredibly special from the district level and above. Before that, I do a lot of breathing techniques. So I breathe through my nose into my stomach. I breathe in for 4, I hold for 4, and then I breathe out through my mouth for 8, just to relax. I do 4 to 6 of those. I do power poses, which is, if you know Amy Cuddy's work around how your physiology informs your psychology, you would find me walking around, arms up, Wonder Woman, music blasting. So those things really helped me. But by the time I got to the district level, we realized there was something much bigger at play. From area, people were starting to message me saying, I don't mean to be strange, but I think you're going to win the World Championships this year. And it wasn't just one person. I had about 10 completely different people telling me that. And I had already had a premonition that I was going to win. And the pressure was immense, because I was like, who am I to think that I can win this? It's almost impossible. But something was going, I think you're going to win it. And so for our district contest, it happened on Mother's Day, and it was about my mom. So my sister and I in the morning went to where we did my mom's memorial, where that book had been. And we played a song, Mother of Mine, off an old LP, like we found a recording. And we really connected that this was for my mom. And this was a tribute to her. And I took that into the contest. When I got to do that speech again at the semifinals, Kay picked me up in the morning. We went and we had our feet rubbed. She said, you need to ground. We went to a lovely little massage place. I had my feet rubbed. And then we went to where my parents' ashes were scattered. And she'd actually written a letter to me from my mom of how proud she was. It was incredibly emotional. And again, it was so much bigger than doing a speech contest. When I made the finals, Kay picked me up in the morning with Waka Waka, It's Time for Africa blasting. She took me back to the massage place. The same girls who'd done us a few weeks before did our feet again. And then we went and sat outside the house my parents had been living in when my dad wrote that final letter to me. And I remembered that this was for him. Mm-hmm. So those were very symbolic ways, quite ritualistic ways we connected with actually what my speech was about. And it was so much bigger than the contest. And so I would say to anyone that that reason for competing will give you an edge. If you're just trying to do a technically perfect speech, I don't know if it gives you as much edge as that level of care. And also having someone in your corner, like I was lucky enough to have. So there's the very long answer. I haven't told many people that story before, but I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Uday.
Yeah. Hi, good morning. Many times I get a question, can you get a day before the meeting to get prepared with a speech and present it? How do we prepare just in one day's notice? How do I pick up a speech title? How do I get prepared? How do I put things together?
Okay, great question. Because a lot of speaking does require that we do something quickly. For me, I will often look back over my life and go, what's a moment that changed me, that shaped me, that humbled me, that taught me a lesson, something fun, a story that I often tell my friends. And I will say, okay, I'm going to tell that story. What's the lesson? What's the message that I got from this? And so rather than just telling an entertaining or heartfelt story, I make sure that I get clear on the message And I go and I tell the story because I don't have to memorize it because it's something I've lived, and I land a message. And I did that when I was trying to get my distinguished Toastmasters designation before I left Toastmasters in 2019. I had to deliver 25 speeches in 7 months before my baby was born. And I would sometimes sign up to speak at 2 clubs a day. And I was having to learn to go into my life going, what speech can I do? So look into your lived experiences, moments that you enjoy talking about. Is there a message? Can I have fun sharing it? Take the pressure off it being perfect. Talk like you're talking at a dinner party. Share it like you're sharing with a friend. That's how I do impromptu speeches, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. I have some backup stories I keep and then try to visit them and tell a story every time they ask until if they don't want any stories anymore, then they realize not to ask me.
Thank you. That's great. Anyone else? That's some great questions. The one thing I can just say with that, when it's looking at having to speak and what am I going to speak about, I do a lot of conferences where I'm the MC or the conference chair, and I always try and find a theme or a thread. And I will choose one story and I will build the entire event around the message that I learned from that. Often something entertaining. I often end up talking about my parents, seems to be my go-to, but there's a lesson in it, and then I tie it into the event. And I found that gives me an increased confidence because all I need to remember is something I already know, rather than trying to be academic or intellectual. And then you get so in your head and you stop trusting that you remember everything. But when you speak from experience and from heart, it makes all the difference.
Okay, no other questions? Okay. Want to let you know, I'm sure you've seen it. I've posted in the chat several times throughout some different ways you can stay connected to Verity. She has a website. There is an excellent ebook about presenting with power. I have that. You'll love it. And also a link for Instagram. Feel free to reach out. The one thing I will say is on her website, you can subscribe to regular newsletters. And that's something I have to tell you I've truly enjoyed because it's like receiving an inspirational message every few days. And I absolutely love that. So if that's something you guys would be interested in, I strongly encourage you to subscribe to that newsletter. I truly appreciate you for gracing us with your presence today. It's been an honor to host you, and I believe us at District 83 have been truly blessed today with some valuable information. Those of you who are planning to compete, I suggest that you rewatch this video when we post it. And as I said, if you connect with Verity through her website by subscribing to the newsletter, you will not be sorry. I also posted in the chat a link just for a short feedback form. It's 5 quick questions. You just click, click, click. Don't even have to write anything if you don't want to. But I'm just trying to get a feel of if this is the kind of material you would like to continue to see. And once again, everyone, please, let's thank Verity for taking out time in her day from South Africa to visit us here in New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pamela, and thank you all so much. It really is such a privilege and a pleasure to be with you all. And I love how small the world is in this virtual space, but hopefully we will meet in person one day. But also, just as if there is someone competing, someone who wants to take it seriously, if you want and are interested in coaching, I'm very happy to offer. If you email me and say you are on this webinar, on my website, there's a 3-package session, and I will give you 5 sessions for the price of 3. So just email me if that's something you want. It's coming up for Christmas. Let's have 5 hours together for the price of 3. And always happy to help. I've been very lucky this year. I had 2 finalists this year. Still pinching myself. And the last 3 years, I've had 3 finalists come third. So it's amazing helping other people. Someone was asking, what do I enjoy most? Watching other people shine. I'm so glad I never have to do it again.
Thank you so much, Verity, and everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.